Have you ever felt like you got shot through the wall? Or maybe you died when you were surely behind cover? Maybe you were sniped by someone so fast you thought, this laggy ass.
Did anybody see him on my screen? Did anybody see him?
Maybe you mentioned it to your buddy and they threw a word at you like, 10 tig bullshit, am I right? Company doesn't even give a shit about us. Well, don't worry, you're not alone. I set out to learn and teach why this happens. You know, beyond the, oh, it's just lag part of it. For my existing subscribers, you know once in a while I like to bring you along the journey of how I came to my conclusions. To anyone who's new to the channel, my name is Castle. I'm what a Zoomer would call a boomer. I've been playing FPS games for over 20 years, and my passion lies in educating others, in particular with PvP. Now today's topic, I'm gonna nerd out a little bit with some concepts, but hopefully you can sit back and learn something from it. Last but not least, my upcoming videos are gonna be about helping you find your sensitivity. I still get a lot of questions from people about mouse sensitivity that I thought was common knowledge, so I decided I'm gonna make a video about it. We're going to talk about a lot of aspects. But without further ado, let's get back into the video. If you were getting shot through the wall a lot and then you decided to go down this rabbit hole to find out what was happening, you'd likely come across an expression called peeker's advantage. And the most common definition of that expression would be that in some cases, you can see your opponent and kill them before they even had a chance to ever see you. I'm going to show you a clip directly from the Valorant dev team who specifically sought out to try and correct this peeker's advantage issue with their dedicated server. And then after that, I'm going to give you a crash course on the history of Netcode and how it applies to where we are today with Destiny 2.
I've got a clip here of a player on the right peeking out on a player on the left. As the player peeks out, there's actually a window of time where he can see the opponent before the opponent sees him. Player A is stepping out on player B, and the reason for that actual delay is a network round trip from player A's computer to the game server down to player B. That entire loop takes that long before B realizes that A exists.
The catch here is that there's actually so many layers as to why this happens. The 4 layers I'm going to walk you through are netcode, angle advantage, Destiny 2's camera angle, and last but not least, the impacts of latency. Starting with netcode, the most basic explanation can be done with a dedicated server. And while this is the part I'm going to throw in the disclaimer that I'm not a network engineer, I've spoken to several game developing network engineers about this topic during my research, so I'm going to give you the Coles notes. First things first, what is ping? When you're in a match and you're completing actions like running, jumping, shooting, your machine is sending packets of data out there saying, hey, I did XYZ. And at the same time, your machine is receiving information back. Some other guy had to send out information about their character. So your machine might be receiving info that says, hey, a dude just threw a grenade at you. This is considered the round trip, and your ping is the full amount of time for your information to get there and information to come back. Now, like I said, Bungie doesn't work the same way that Valorant example worked. You see, back in the Halo days with a group of people trying to get into a match, Bungie would actually use something called a client-host methodology. Essentially, they'd be picking someone in that group to be their server for that match. During that match, all the players would be sending their data to that client that Bungie had picked for the host. That client-host machine was then responsible for sending that data back to everyone else. It was kind of like everyone's info had to go through this one client-host person in the middle. This is also why your crappy buddy would slay out in team SWAT sometimes. Host advantage. Developers basically said, okay, instead of trusting little Jimmy's PS4 Wi-Fi, let's build an actual warehouse with our own server. Other games such as Counter-Strike use dedicated servers, just like that Valorant clip. The concept of a peer-to-peer methodology was to eliminate that expensive middleman server and have people's machines just talk to one another. It should be faster just to talk to your buddy, right? The problem comes from when you start to have more and more people in the lobby. In fact, peer-to-peer is highly recommended for fighting games, but when you have situations like 6v6 with 12 people running around the map doing tons of different things, it can get a bit chaotic. This is also why with D2's situation, you can usually single out that one person that you seem to have a terrible connection with. I'm going to get to theirs in a second, but you'll notice that all 3 of these methodologies suffer from travel time regardless of a middleman or not. First off, you've got geographical differences. Then on top of that, you've got the fact that even being closer to each other doesn't always mean it's going to be successful or the best route. Your network data doesn't just go in a straight line. Sometimes your bus route only goes one way to get to your house and you have to just stick it out the whole way around. Lastly, you've got update rates and tick rates. A game's update rate is essentially the threshold that they want you sending data. So for Destiny, it's been measured at 40 hertz in the past. If your machine and your network can handle it, that's how frequent it'll send out the info. Believe it or not, it isn't just your network that determines how fast your update rate's going to be. Your machine's hardware can also have an impact on this. The reason why I'm talking about this is that when you're in a match, seldom will you be in a situation where everyone is sending max update rates. I can easily run into someone who's giving me information at 40 hertz while I'm giving them information at 40 hertz, but then turn around the corner and be in a fight with someone who's only giving me information at 7 hertz, 10 hertz, 12 hertz, hertz while I'm the one still giving them information at 40 hertz. This is why sometimes when you hit someone, you have that delay with that hit marker and those damage numbers. It's important to not mix up update rate and tick rate. The easiest way I could think of explaining a tick rate for a server is that it's basically how often it decides to do something with the information. So let's just say, for total example purposes, you want to say something to the server every 2 seconds. You say hi, then 2 seconds later you say hey, and then you keep doing this. When the tick comes, it processes the data, it sees that you said hi, moving on. The next tick in 2 seconds, it does it again. Tick rates don't always match people's update rates. It might not want to look at it until every 5 seconds. So in that case, what some of these network engineers were explaining to me is that that data can actually just build up, and then only once the tick rate goes, it will actually be evaluated. So it'll be like hi, hey, all at once. This can also cause double damage glitches, by the way. Now, a lot of people say, well, just increase the tick rate. And this is always encouraged, but it's useless unless the update rates are good. If the server is not getting any information, checking for information more frequently is a bit of a waste of time, right? So there's a balance there. Now, that was a mouthful, but it's the best I could do for a castle crash course. Triple C? I don't know. Sounds kind of weird. What the hell is Destiny 2? Well, it's a hybrid. They've gone to explain these things at great length for Destiny 1 and a wee bit in an interview for Destiny 2. I've included some links below. It's pretty confusing, but here's a diagram of it. Imagine an activity in the game being a bubble. First, you have something called an activity host. This is a dedicated Bungie server. It just does small tasks like managing the score, the timer, ammo spawns, etc. You've also got your entire player base in that bubble, and these players are all communicating in a peer-to-peer environment. Then after that, you have another dedicated server from Bungie called a physics host. It isn't explicitly stated online where they draw the line for things like player movement and bullets, but I'm quite certain the peer-to-peer mesh manages that, while the physics host is likely some kind of sanity check. The problem is that that physics host has never been authoritative. In other words, cheaters. They get to fly around the map. However, I have to say it was kind of exciting to read the TWAB last week where they said that this is now going to be authoritative. Now, we've gone through all these different things like client host, dedicated servers, peer-to-peer networks, the fact that there's delay, and what I want you to take from it is what I said before, that all three of these have one thing in common: information travel time. If you're sitting still for a while, it is very safe to say that your position has been communicated outward and everyone has received it. But when you peek, you have a moment to act against a defender while your info is still being sent out there. You guys know my rule though. Proof is always in the pudding, and I'll show you that. Before I go through those results, I want to talk about the last 3 sections, and these ones will go a lot quicker. I'm going to do number 2 and 3 at the same time: angle management and camera position in Destiny 2. Here's a tool I've made up to demonstrate this live. You've got person C over here on the left-hand side. This little circle around them represents their body, okay? Just think of that as the extremities of what you can see. Then up top, we've got person B. Same deal. We've got a box here just to simulate a corner. The number up here is the distance from person B to that corner, while the number down here is the distance from person C to that corner. You can see if I move it around, that number starts to change. And last but not least, there's some lines and shaded triangles on here. This represents their view. If person C is standing right here, for example, well, this dashed line represents how far they can see with their peripheral vision on the left-hand side. And when it hits the wall, well, they can't see past the wall, so I didn't shade that side. The part that is shaded is everything that they can see beyond the wall. So essentially, it's a straight line from that corner out and everything to the right. If person C is very close to the corner, in this case, call it 2.1 meters, this triangle represents what they can see. Look at how much of an advantage person B has from being far away from the corner, okay? Right now, person C's vision limit is all the way over here. Person B, however, can already see person C. Do you see how their line right here is crossing over person C's body, and they're not even close to where person C's vision can see? This is how angle management works. The further you are from a corner, the more angle you have to play with. Person B way out here is still not within person C's vision, and they can see damn near half the entire body of person C. As they get closer, eventually, once they're 2.1 meters close in the exact same distance like this, now they can see the exact same amount on each other's bodies. Let's take a legitimate example of dead cliffs. Here's a layout drawn by Relict, and if we zoom in and apply this to the corner over by Connector, we can see exactly how far out you need to be to really have an advantage. But there's a catch. Camera angle. Destiny 2's camera angle is funky. You see how I've created 2 triangles now? Well, this original line, this dashed line, represents that other example that I just showed you. But Destiny's camera is not right on the center like this. It's actually shifted to the left. That creates less vision if you're peeking right. Now you can kind of see these 2 lines out here, right? And if I make this go out even further, you can see that vision getting screwed over even more. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know the exact amount. I just did this a bit to illustrate. So let's put person C C in position. We'll put their camera angle right around there. Now let's zoom out and take a look at person B. We've got their camera angle pretty far out. Let's tighten that up a bit. Now you can see right here, B is not even close to the camera angle vision limit of person C. They've got all this room to play with up here on the staircase, up here, closer to this back wall. They can even come in a little bit tighter right here. There's a massive advantage when you're fighting people in this corner. So now that I spent hours and hours making this is the part where I ask you to press that subscribe button and say I freaking love you for liking this video. Oh, and I'll show you what this looks like in game. Mun and I are in a straight line with the corner in between us, and he's very close to it while I'm far back. This is in real time and shows why holding a close angle is so much worse. He can't see me at all while I can easily snipe him. If there's anything you've taken from that section, it's that you should always be moving. You should always hold angles from afar, and that because Destiny's camera angle is on the left, you're at an advantage if you're peeking in that direction. An applicable example would be Bannerfall. If you spawn on this side of the map, don't go up top. The odds are stacked against you. Sure, you might hit the snipe, you might trade, but at the end of the day, you should go where the odds are. How about that middle lane in Endless Vale? Take your pick depending on what spawn you're on. Now, the next section is where I talk about the proof is in the pudding. Only in this case, we had a lot of fun playing with different latencies and pings, allegedly using a VPN. Is that okay? Are we allowed to play with a VPN? Allegedly? Across 20 plus tournaments, someone named Sayu consistently dominates the sniping scene. Sure, he uses a controller, but I am certainly not here to talk about controller versus mouse. A statement that I hear so many of his opponents say is, I swear to God, his screen does not register my flinch. But when I went to do my tests for Peeker's advantage, I realized I could likely dig into this at the same time. I performed 40 different tests peeking around a corner. I used 2 completers that were close by. I went up against someone in the UK. I used angle disadvantages and angle advantages for both the defender and the peeker. Then I allegedly used a VPN connecting to Australia, giving myself 300 ping. Across all of my tests, the peeker came out on top 82% of the time. And you know what's really funny? When high ping was involved, the peeker's advantage skyrocketed. Look at this one specifically. When I'm in Australia, I have a 25 frame advantage over Patty. That's 417 milliseconds. The average human reaction is around 200 to 250 milliseconds. Putting that into perspective, imagine first reacting to seeing an enemy, then reacting by aiming to his head, forcing yourself to look away or aim away, then re-aiming back at him before you're allowed to shoot. Before I get flamed, I decided to play a bunch of games at this ping, and there are a lot of downsides. I would take low ping any day, hands down. But my point is that in some cases, you might get sniped and think, what the fuck was that? I was way behind the wall. Or you might think, I flinched the shit out of this person. But the fact of the matter is that on their screen, they already killed you before your flinch even got to reach them. So seriously, stop sitting around, start moving. Now, I know this wasn't your typical double your KD for $9.99, but this is a topic I've always wanted to dig into further, and hopefully you learned something from it. In fact, pop quiz, this video showed a sneak peek into one of the tricks I'm going to show you in Crucible. I'm kind of curious who has an eye for it and who could actually spot it. I left a little bit of an Easter egg in there, so let me know in the comments if you think your gameplay is good enough to spot that trick. And something I wanted to bring up was the fact that whenever I meet new people to do testing on a video like this, they often end up telling me how they have no one to play PvP with. If you're interested in finding a good group of people who are not judgmental whatsoever and only want to get better together, I highly recommend joining the Discord. We've got a lot of great people in there who are always looking to play PvP. I'm going to leave the link down below, and if you decide to join, we'd love to have you. If you've made it this far, what you can see on screen right now is a snippet of DIM. Destiny Item Manager is an incredible program that helps you make amazing builds. I'm talking perfect stats on your character within minutes. The lower thumbnail on screen will bring you right to that video, while the other one is what YouTube thinks you like best based on your recommendations.